All right, guys, welcome back to the Invisible Practice Podcast. Today we have amazing magician, a really nice pal, good friend of mine, Eric Richardson. How are you, Eric?
I'm fine. Thanks for having me on your podcast. This is cool.
Cool. Like I really wanted to talk with you because like we at the podcast like I like to go a bit deeper into magic. And when we met last time, like you gave me your little booklet, which I think was like something for the session, right? Like the
Yeah,
concoction.
it was a giveaway for the session. Yeah.
And
Last was it? No, not. I guess it wasn't last year, was it? Was it the year before?
I think it was a
I think,
while ago because I remember seeing it already at Aliash's place like 2 years ago, I think.
yeah, that's probably about right because I don't think the session happened last year live
Mm,
because of the pandemic, but I'm not sure. I can't remember exactly. That was the last giveaway I gave away
really?
before the pandemic really started throwing a wrench into everyone's plans, you know. So yeah, hopefully there'll be a session this year. We'll see.
I hope so.
I'm hoping to. I really miss it. So yeah, I gave
Mhm.
you that at the session a couple years ago.
Well, not at the session. You gave this to me in France when I
Oh,
was. Yeah.
that's right. When we met, that's
Hmm.
right. I, it was from the session, but I gave it
It
to you in
was from
France.
the
That's right.
session. Yeah, yeah. Because I
Right.
saw it at Aliash's
Okay.
place and I was like, this looks interesting. I'm forward to reading this. And I asked you once, like, hey, do you sell it? You were like, nope. But
Yeah.
you were so kind to give me one when I came.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And yeah, that's right. That's why I'm a little bit confused because it didn't feel like that long ago when I gave it to you, but
It's because it isn't.
um, because it wasn't. But I gave it away at the session, I guess a couple years before that. So anyway, um, that's a little booklet I gave, and it was had some cards with it for a routine, and then it had the little essays at the
Mhm.
beginning, and so I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah, but like it's not something I would see myself perform because I'm like, and that's also at the same time what I love about it. You know, because it's something that I love to see you perform. It's like very characteristic to how you perform, and also like from the essays you already get sort of an understanding. Like you are a person that's like I think the first quote is like art is autobiographical or something is one of the.
Yeah, that's a Federico Fellini
Mm,
quote, and that yeah, all art is autobiographical. Yeah, and
exactly.
I saw that quote when I was in high school, and it stuck with me ever since. And so yeah, the first essay in that book is about me coming to terms with that, trying to come to terms with that quote, and like, is it true? Is all art autobiographical? It's a pretty bold statement, and thinking through that and my conclusions from that are still, you know, I still use that
Mm.
as the guide for my own artistic expression through magic and other things as well. But yeah, that's I think it's a good quote. I think it's
I
a
think so too. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, it was. But I don't. Of course, when you put something out like that, and especially when you give it to people, they didn't
Mhm.
buy it or or go, "I want this." When it comes to the particular trick. So I'm never surprised when someone goes, "Oh, I like it, but it's not me," or whatever. It's like, well, of course, But
Yeah, but
um,
that's what I like the most about it because that's at the same time if a trick is like something that everyone can do and everyone would enjoy it, it's also sort of generic, right? Because, or maybe it's like
right,
very versatile because everyone can give their own twist to it. But I also
hmm,
like things which are very peculiar and very particular, and this is very particular for you
right,
because I remember you explaining to me how you were studying about the witch hounds and about alchemy and like these different types of things, and it's
hmm,
really visible within this trick.
yeah. Yeah, and so yeah, and the reason I included it was not because I thought everyone was going to go out and start doing it. Although I'm happy if someone does, of course, and that would be cool. But it was more to just provide an example from my own repertoire of what I was talking about in the essays. And like, and here's a way where I applied these thoughts
Mm,
to my own my own desire to express myself artistically and autobiographically to some degree in the magic. And here's a way to do that. And this is a way that I have approached it. But there's of course other ways. But I used a historic event of the witch hunt, Salem witch trials, as a way to kind of express something that happened in my own life in a magical way without directly talking about what happened to me and my family in a very hard situation. And so it's a way to talk about those things and share them, but in a different context that's not so close to me, and my particular story. And I think that's one way that I've tried to approach some of the autobiographical, trying to express my own self in my magic. Is I found that finding sometimes pinning something to relating it to a historical event, an interesting historical event, has been a kind of a productive way to do that. And but it's only one way. Of course, you can be very open about, I'm going to tell you a story about my life, and that would also be obviously directly autobiographical. But
yeah, but it's a good way to point as well, I suppose, because now you can also say, well, what's like the main concept, feeling, or core behind this idea, and how to transfer this into a story or into a presentation. So like, I think even if you're talking about coincidence, you don't have to direct. If you do like a coincidental trick, like do as I do, for example, or if you perform like sympathetic 13 instead of as magic as a coincidence effect, then I think with those things you don't have to talk directly about coincidence, but you can still point towards it.
Right.
Like, for example, one thing I like to say is, hey, let's create a coincidence, or rather a paradox. And the reason why I say rather a paradox is because coincidence by nature is like coincidental. It's like you're not expecting to do it. So if you are consciously creating coincidence, it's still a coincidence.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it's something kind of related to that is, tricks where, it's like if someone's really being critical of it, if you have someone name a card and it's the only one face up in the deck, you could play that as a coincidence, but, no one's probably going to believe that. Or if they do, it's okay. It's 1 out of 52, and that's not that, I mean, it's impressive, but they named any card, it's the only one face up. But I think what the unspoken part of that is, and you don't have to speak it because it's powerful with an audience, but I think the unspoken part of that is the fact that they know that you are doing something for them and it is supposed to work. And so that they know that this is different than just, it wasn't that lucky, because you're standing in front of them and you're getting paid to do a show, or the context is that you're performing and not going, I hope I get lucky during this show. I hope all my stuff works out. And so I think people know that. And I think that's those unspoken things. I don't think everything has to be laid out, because I think you can think, is this something that an audience will pick up or understand on their own? And I think you can do that with coincidence types of tricks, but then also tricks that, are maybe even supposed to be predictions, or ones like, I knew it would be the right one. Statistically, 1 out of 52 maybe isn't the most impressive thing, but the context makes it impressive, because you're doing a show and you can't just go into a show and go, I'm going to start this thing and 1 out of 52 times it'll work. Maybe. Yay. You can't do that as a performer. So audiences know that, and they're just like, wow, that's crazy. But I've thought about playing around with like actually spelling that out for an audience, like really putting that in the presentation.
Really?
But I never have yet. But it'd be interesting to kind of walk through that with them. Maybe. I don't know if there was an entertaining way to do it. I thought it'd be kind of cool to have them like think through what's kind of going on in their subconscious, but bring it to the forefront and be like, this could be a coincidence, but then I am getting paid to do this show. So, and then they'll be like, oh, right. Or something. That's not a very good presentation, but something along those lines. I think it's interesting.
Also like what you touched on is like, you can reframe an effect, right? So with coincidence, but with not with everything with duocidal you can't usually, but with some other things like let's say like an invisible deck or card is in your wallet, you could present all of those things like a coincidence, like a prediction, right? So before the show, I turn over one card in the deck, or before the show, I put one card in my wallet, whatever. Same as with the with sucker effect. You can present the sucker effect as a sucker effect, but the interesting thing is a lot of sucker effects inherently can also be that the magic is happening to the magician. Like it's reversed. Like the magician isn't aware of this happening, but all of a sudden this thing happens to him, and he doesn't know why. He's like the happy victim in the story.
Yeah, yeah. Those are fun when you have the magician in trouble or something's happening to the magician and he doesn't know about. Of course, I think the audience knows that you're just playing, but that's part of the fun. They can, as long as they can enjoy it and be a part of that. Oh, that's funny that we're pretending that the magician doesn't know what's going on, and they can get into the act of it with you. That can be, it can change the texture of the show. If you have something like that in it, I think would be cool. It's just very different type. Instead of the direct, I'm going to show you something and amaze you. It'd be a little more like we're all just having a fun time here, and we're going to pretend like I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, and it's also like instant drama. Like immediately there's a conflict, which then becomes interesting because how is he going to solve it?
Right. Yeah. And as long as, I think the audience probably really knows that you're not really in trouble. But that's part of the fun of it,
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah. Although I've never done, I shouldn't say I've never done any tricks that are actually like that, because that's not true, but I don't tend to do tricks like that. I think I've experimented with it in the past, but I can't think of any shows, like actual real shows that I've put together where I've ever had a trick in it where it was magicians in trouble, oh no, kind of thing. Now that's not true in the kids shows.
Oh yeah.
In kids shows, but for adults and for young adults through adults, I don't think I've ever put together a show like that. But it's really fun with kids. I mean, there's no reason not to do it with adults. I just never have done it. I just have to think about why I've never done it. I don't have an answer for that. I have to think about why I've never really done that with adults. And I've certainly never created a magic trick like that, that I would envision doing for adults. So, but yeah, for kids, it's super fun because they get all screaming and they don't, I think kids believe that you don't know that something's happened or that you're made a mistake. I think they buy into it and they get, very vocal about it, which is really, which is really fun. You can get them screaming like crazy over that stuff, which is part of the fun of the show. But
maybe that's also the reason why you haven't done it for adults, right? Because they know.
Yeah, they just don't scream the same way. No, I don't know. I don't know why I've never done it for adults. I'm gonna have to actually sit around and think about that for a little bit. I've never really thought about it. Do you perform effects like that for your adult audiences? Yeah.
I perform my suit apparition like this.
Yeah.
Okay. Because in the suit apparition, like you very usually have, like in my presentation, at one point, like I produce a card like sort of in the air. But that's then the wrong card. But I don't know because I can only see the back, and I very cocky just throw it down and I go on. So then that creates that moment where the audience knows, like, oh, you fucked up, and I don't know, and then at the end I find out. Yeah. And of course, when I find out, I also done the switch already. So then all the cards change from spades to hearts, and then the card matches again. And I also do like Vernon's for matching the cards.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Which is a very good trick, I believe. But the interesting thing I found is like Tommy Wonder has this essay where he describes that he's not a fan of this type of effect because the magician is sort of putting up his middle finger against the audience because he's fully aware in that moment that he's not screwing up, but he's making them believe it, and then at the end like he solves it. But if that's like interpreted in the wrong way, it feels like like you're betraying your audience.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I think it
I think.
depends on the degree how you play it, because very often, like with the matching the cards, it's like perfect feeling. People sort of like, they feel a bit bad or they're a bit happy, like yes, he fucked up finally, and then I just play it like oh fuck, and I try to solve it.
Mhm.
But once in a live show, I genuinely fucked up in my setup for the suit operation, and I had to solve it in a different way. And then I used that energy of the bumminess of the genuine fuck up for that ending, because I thought, oh, I'm gonna be a good actor. I'm gonna use like the genuine feeling for it. And then I watched the show back on video, and I was like, fuck, that this one was much too much. Like even I, when I watched it, I believed I genuinely fucked up because I fucked up, and then it was solved. And it was like, oh man, this was such a big bum out, and then it was solved, and it felt like
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah. Well, and as you were talking about that, I was thinking actually there is one way that I've used. I think you know, pretty much every magician doing card magic's probably done it at some point. I don't think I have it built into any of my routines, like real routines. But if you just sometimes doing just some casual magic tricks or something, I will do what everyone does, where you get the card out, you've produced the card or whatever. They don't know what it is yet. You look at it and your face goes, and everyone goes, oh, and then you turn it over and go, no, it's right, and that's that same idea, where but they don't, they're just trusting your reaction, and but it's very quick and it's very light, and it's, you're just playing
yeah.
with
But I think
them.
it's also a bit like fun. Like I'm screwing with you,
Yeah, right. And it's over so fast. It's not like you sit there and look at it and go, oh gosh,
You become depressed.
oh yeah, and you can't ham it up for too long. It's just a very short little, like, no, it's right, and that can be fun, and it lets people off the hook really fast, and they know you're playing with them, and it's just silly. But that's the
It's a
same
very
idea.
friendly tone to it, I guess. But I mean, if you go too far into it, like into believing you really screwed up and you're bummed out, then I think
Yeah. Well, that's a bad place to put your audience anyway, because, I don't know. Maybe there are some audiences out there that really want to see magicians screw up. But for the most part, I think in my experience, and probably most people's experience, the audiences don't really want you to mess up. They want to see a good magic trick. They want to see something that'll blow their mind or be cool or funny. Obviously, if they're seeing magic, they want it to some level be magical. And you messing up is not very magical. So
unless those people are your friends, then they really look.
Yeah. Right. But, I think in general, if you have a good presentation and a good personality, and you have done the things to make the audience like you and want to watch you, they want to watch you succeed, and they want to be a part of that. They want to see magic. They want to experience magic. And, they don't, in my experience, I don't feel like most audiences really want to see the magician screw up so they can laugh at him. Having said that, I've seen some magicians throughout, my time, thankfully not very many, but, magicians who get people up on stage and they're just an absolute jerk, and they make fun of the person, their physical appearance, the way they talk, they just, anything, maybe people in the audience laugh, but the person is not laughing. And I've seen probably more than once, really, like audiences kind of turn on the magician because they're being such a jerk to the audience as a whole, or to the person on stage. And I think at that point, the audience doesn't like that person and would be more than happy to watch them fail, because they've decided, I don't like you. You're not a nice person, and this is kind of miserable. And the one thing that would make it less miserable is to watch you fail. That's a bad place to be as a performer. But, I've seen performers go there for the cheap laugh. And I always find it really tragic. I think it's a horrible way to treat your audience, and a horrible way to present magic and present yourself, because I don't think people, why would people like a person who gets up and insults people in front of 300 other people. That's just a really horrible thing.
You don't even want someone to see it, to do it to one person. So how would you want to see
Right,
it to
right,
300?
right. Yeah, and especially, you're taking advantage. The power disparity is pretty great too. I mean, you're taking a person, what you're doing. You're the one who's commanding the stage, and you bring them up, and there's already a power disparity and a thing like that, and then you're going to abuse them verbally or embarrass them. I just think it's a bad. It's a bad look.
Such a fucked up thing to do, especially just for a laugh.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I can think of a handful of people without even really trying hard that I've seen in my life. Some of them known, and some of them local magicians that no one in the larger magic community would know, but who do that kind of thing, and I always find it very uncomfortable, very tragic to see that, because it's just, yeah, they're getting laughs from a certain group of the audience, but it's at their assistants, their volunteers' expense. And I think it's unprofessional, and I think it's a bad look for the performer ultimately. I mean, I would never, if I saw someone doing that, I would never hire them to come to do something at my event,
No, definitely not.
So I don't know. And maybe not everyone agrees with me on that. I guess not, because there are people that still do it that way. But and plenty of people have spoken out against it. I'm certainly not the first, but from my own experience, man, I hate that. How did we get on that? I don't know. But anyway, it's one of my pet peeves. I hate that. I hate seeing people mistreated when they're at a magic show. I think it's just the antithesis of what a magic show is supposed to be.
Yeah, but isn't it much more beautiful to see someone come on stage being very vulnerable, like not really being comfortable, not knowing what to expect, and then for a performer to uplift that person to completely forget that they're in front of 300 people. And to just be pure and in that moment.
Yeah, it's respectful to the person, it's respectful to the rest of the audience, and it's treating people with humanity, and I think it opens up your performance to beautiful possibilities, whereas the other way closes them. People decide they don't like you or they don't want to help you. And that doesn't help you perform your magic. But I don't know why people do it. Honestly, I don't know why people go to that. I guess my only guess really is that people go to that because they don't, well, maybe they're just not nice people, or maybe it has to do more with they haven't thought through anything better to say. And so maybe it comes down to laziness. It's easy to insult someone for a laugh. It's harder to come up with a good presentation that's clever and interesting, and it's just much easier to make fun of people. I don't know.
I think that depends on the person you are, because for me, that's a very hard thing to do.
Yeah. Well, yeah, for some people, it's easier to, in a social situation, just do that. I don't know. I don't know what all the reasons are. I just know I just really hate to see it when it happens. But in case you can't tell.
Really?
Yeah, I have a little bit passionate about that one. Yeah. But that's okay. But
ladies
anyway.
and gentlemen, watch out. Next year, Eric Richardson's new book, Don't Be a Jerk on Stage.
Don't be a jerk on stage. That would be a good one. Thankfully, though, I think that most performers aren't that way, or don't do it. If they do it, it's not the main part of their act, at least, and maybe they're doing it out of this insecure moment, or they have a situation where they don't know what to do and they just fall back on some piece of like crass kind of comedy or something. But most performers I've seen, and maybe this is true for you, I think that message is out there, and
oh yeah,
most performers I see don't do that,
most of them are more stuck with like stock lines than with being a jerk. So it's still not
Yeah,
ideal, but much better.
yeah, stock lines. You know, we've all used them. I'm gonna pretend I'm not guilty of it, and I'll probably use some again in the future at some point. Stock lines, of course. But I try to write my own scripts and to create my own presentations for even very standard common effects as much as possible. I'm not saying that there's nothing in my routine that's pretty much like I kind of say what the trick came with, you know, certainly there's some things like that in probably everyone's repertoire, but I try hard to write my own scripts and come up with my own presentations. And I enjoy doing it, but I think it also is part of that. How do I make this mine? How do I express, if all art is truly autobiographical, like Fellini said, then I am saying something about myself no matter what. If all I ever do is use stock lines and insult people, I'm telling people something about myself. It is indeed autobiographical. And so what do, and even if it's completely a fake character you have on stage, it's telling people two things. One, it's you're informing your character by how you act. So at least in that sense, they're relating to that autobiographical fake character. But really, at the end of the day, if they know they're going to know it's a fake character at some point, because they know you're an actor you're on stage and you're doing a very specific kind of thing that maybe it'd be hard to believe you would do in real life. So they know you have a character, but that still tells them something about you, that you're the kind of person who could create a character and do those kinds of things. So even then, there is something autobiographical about it. You know, because you are telling people something about who you are through the character you create.
Right.
And so I think Fellini is right. I think that all art is on some level autobiographical. Sometimes it can be very blatant. Sometimes it's more subtle. But I think that our presentations do say something about us. So if that's true, then I want to be at least a little bit thoughtful about what I'm communicating about myself through my magic, my presentations and those kind of things. So, yeah, I think that, that writing your own scripts is, you know, there's a lot of benefits to it, but I think that's one of them is like for that particular type of thing, what am I going to present to my audience about myself? Well, you know, you've kind of got to write your own script if you know, to be able to pull that off. And I think that's a really good thing. I tell you what, my favorite books right now are the Peter McCabe Scripting Magic, and then Vanishing Ink put out the second volume. And if there's anyone listening to this podcast who hasn't checked out those books, I'm not friends with Pete McCabe. I'm not, you know, I don't get anything for pushing his books at all. I'm just talking about them because I think they're just wonderful. And I think if someone is interested in writing scripts, if you've been writing scripts, it will only help you get better. If you've never really done it before, it will give you pretty much everything you need to have the confidence to start doing it and doing it well. So I just can't recommend those books enough. If I had like 5 books to recommend to people, those would be, I guess I'd have to count them as 2 of them because now there's 2 volumes. So I'd still have 3 books left over, but what?
You can count them as one, or you just say
okay, I'll count them as one. Scripting Magic 1 and 2 is one of my 5 books. Okay, yeah.
Just like the Tarbell course in Magic is one of my 5.
Yes, right. Yeah, those are the first real. I mean, yeah, those are the first books I really studied when I really started getting into magic.
Really?
And yeah, I had just started my first job. And so I'd get my paycheck, which wasn't much because I was working at an appliance store, dusting off their appliances and moving stuff around and building, this is in Florida, and building, you know, like TV racks for old ladies and stuff because they couldn't build them themselves, so, you know, doing all that. And so I wasn't making much money. I wasn't working there too much just after high school, you know, at the end of the day, whatever. But every week, well, not every week, every month I'd get my paycheck and I would take a little bit of it, well, pretty much most of it, because I don't think it was that much. But I would take it, and I would get another copy of Tarbell from there's a local magic shop where I lived. I was able to, go to, which is pretty rare to have a brick and mortar magic shop. And this was in Sarasota and Bradenton down in Florida. And there's a magic shop there that had been there for a while. And I would go in and get the next volume of Tarbell with my paycheck until I had the whole set. And I would spend that month studying it, and then I would get the next one. And I still look at those, still consult those. They're amazing. There's so much good magic in them. Some of it's outdated and a little bit odd, and there's a couple things that are embarrassing in it. Probably racist, even. Not probably, they are. So there are some things in there that are just like, ooh, that's not good. But for the most part, as a whole, they're amazing. But yeah. Anyway. That wouldn't include those in my top 5 books, though, that I would recommend to someone, though. It would be something to recommend, but I probably have others that I'd recommend more. But
yeah, but I mean, like, what I love about Tarbell, like, I have all of them because I got like a really good deal on them once, like all of them for $120, I think.
Yeah, that's a good deal.
That's a good deal. But what I love about them is, like, I haven't read them that much, and not from cover to cover, but whenever I'm doing research about magic or about a particular effect. But also I wanted to start the billiard balls, and there's surprisingly little I could find about the billiard balls in like magic books, other than like No, the Art of Magic has something, Greater Magic obviously has something, I believe The Fine Art of Magic also, and then like Tarbell, that's everything on my shelf that has something with it. But already the routine in Tarbell with this stuff is like, it's not a great routine, but it's structured in such a way that it's a really good routine to learn all the moves and the basic principles to perform the effect.
Yeah, they're just an amazing resource. And one of the things about them is that a lot of the things are fully scripted, and not that you would ever use that, but when I was younger, and these were some of the first magic books I was experiencing and studying, that was really important, because what it taught me was that, well, it taught me a lot of different things, that script, how important a script is, but it showed me the timing of things, like when you just read a trick and it doesn't have any scripting notes or anything, or even a full script or anything like that, you have to work all that stuff out for yourself. And that there's nothing wrong with that. But especially when you're new to magic and you're just learning, that can be really, really tough. And one of the good things about having examples of fully scripted routines is, as you're reading through it, you're like, oh, okay, the script is helping me accomplish the magic and giving not only reasons for things, but time for things to happen and when that thing is going to happen. And the script gives you a framework for always knowing when that thing is going to happen in your routine, and being able to plan that out, and that secret move or whatever, or the misdirection, all those things. It's really hard to plan those kinds of things out in any way that's going to make your trick work well if you don't have any sense of the timing of it. And you can't, Eugene Berger points this out, and I didn't learn, I read it from him later when he was talking about it, but I thought, oh yeah, I'd learned that from Tarbell, from reading this, from reading the stuff and performing some of the routines from in there. And I would start with the written script, at least at the beginning. And, but, Eugene Berger points out that he has a story where he was at a magic lecture, and he's doing a magic lecture, and he wanted to talk about different things. And he realized, I can't talk to these magicians about this because, we really need to talk about scripting and stuff like that, because I can't talk to them about timing, which is what he wanted to talk to them about, timing of things, if there's no script, and I think that's true. I think that's something I learned from Tarbell. It kind of drilled into me, he doesn't really say it that way. Maybe he does somewhere, but that kind of idea is certainly there as you go through work through the tricks, and then you start getting a sense of that the timing of things is important, and the script is helping that happen. And so I try to always write my own scripts for my tricks, and that's why I include them in I always, not always, but almost always have a complete script for each trick I write up for a book, or for the books I've written, or different things. I try to have a complete script. Not that I think that everyone will use my script. I certainly hope they don't, I try to, what I say when I perform it, or a generic version of what I say when I perform it, close to it at least. But I really include them primarily because I think you're going to need to say something here, because something needs to be said here while this is happening. And if you don't say something, you won't get the timing right. You won't have it flow right, So if nothing else, at least my script is showing someone, you need to have something to say right here. Something has to happen here, while you're doing whatever it is in the routine. And so I always try to include that for that reason. I don't really believe anyone's going to ever take my scripts and use them for their own effects, although they certainly could. But and I don't always include my actual scripts.
Just for my session gift in 2 years, I'm gonna record like an entire DVD with your scripts.
Oh, that'd be horrible. Yeah, I read some of my scripts from some of my old stuff, and we're going to rework it and start performing it again, and I'm like, oh gosh, I wouldn't say it that way now. That's not me. But that's part of the whole. People change, and I'm not 20 anymore. I'm 50, and I just turned 50, and so I look back at some of the scripts I wrote when I was 20, and then go, okay, that's just. I'm not going to say it like that anymore, for whatever reason. It's just not me. I've changed.
I've lived. Worrisome if it was the same.
Right. Yeah. It'd be kind of weird. Right. So sometimes there are major changes. Sometimes it's just minor little things. And, but yeah, that's part of being the autobiographical nature of it too. I'm not the same person I was when I was 20. In some ways I am, but in other ways I'm not. I've experienced a lot of things I hadn't experienced when I was 20, and so I look at the world differently now than I did then. And so if I want it to be my performance to somehow express who I am now, then it's going to change, to some degree. And that's an interesting thing. Some routines have been more that way than others. I'm like, I just wouldn't even perform. Well, I've actually dropped routines, like stone cold dropped them out of my repertoire, because I'm like, I don't know how I'd perform that now. And I would never perform it the way I performed it then. So I just be true to myself. Maybe someday I'll figure out a way to perform it, but I'm not feeling it. And I wouldn't perform it that way anymore. It just wouldn't feel authentic to me anymore. So forget it. I'll just find something else. So I have had a couple, not a lot of routines like that, but I have had a couple things where I've let them go, for now at least. Others have just changed with me, a really popular routine, of course, from Eugene Berger. Every magician knows it. Lots of magicians do it now because of his influence, of course, is the torn and restored, or burnt and restored, thread, right? I've performed that since I learned it from his book, way back in the 80s. And way back in the 80s, good grief.
You're so ridiculous.
Old. That sounded so ridiculous. But way back in the 80s. But
when everything was still cheap.
When everything was cheap, I could go to good grief. So, but I still have that I perform that all the time, but my performance for it is not the same as it was back then. I've had several different scripts for it, but yeah, that's one trick that I've always kept, but I've been able to change the script as I have changed, or my interests have changed, or the things I want to do is different. So it's interesting. Some things haven't made that kind of cut, other things have. So it's interesting. But yeah, the scripting magic books, man, they're great. And on top of that, there's some really awesome routines in there too. I mean, there's good magic in those books. If you think it's just a book that, oh, well, I don't want to read a whole book about some guy telling me how I'm supposed to say things, you know, I mean, it's better than that would be kind of maybe a more boring book, but his plenty of examples of how to script different effects and why they were done that way, and interviews with people like Eugene Berger, who, you know, arguably is was one of the best at writing a script, you know, for his effects. I mean, he's just he's a master at it, and studying his magic is really a great one for that. The only thing I would say about that too is, since I'm on a rant, is the new book with Larry Haas, the two new books, you know, From Beyond, and then Final Secrets, the final works of Eugene Berger that have been published. Those books are great for studying Eugene's scripting and his ability to do it, and how he was able to do it so well, especially From Beyond, where Larry Haas goes and Eugene go through in great detail. I think it was the effect greed. It's the effect where the money, the bills change. It's like you know, he uses the Richard Sanders version of extreme burn, and the money changes from ones to hundreds or whatever. And but the really interesting thing about that is Larry provides like copies. Larry and Eugene provide copies of his script as he was editing it, and you can see what Eugene was taking out and how he was modifying it, and, you know, eliminating stuff that just didn't need to be there, so it was tight and strong and a powerful script. And it's a really great, really valuable example of that. And there's more of that in both of those books that have just recently come out. But those are probably some of my favorite parts of those books, actually, is watching that, and all that examples of the evolution of how that trick was scripted by Eugene was really cool. So yeah, those are good books on scripting, I think. But do you write your own? I mean, do you actually write down your own scripts, or do you just create them in your head? Or
for me, they're very loose scripts, right? So like when I do close-up, most of the time I don't, because I think it's like important to play with the moment, and I still sort of have a script or like a general idea what I want to talk about, but I sort of just feel like, oh, what type of people are this? How do they vibe? How deep can I go with this stuff? You know? Yeah. But for stage, yeah, definitely. Like I don't write down whole scripts, but I have very loose scripts. So I have like concepts I want to talk about, and I know which trick is coming after or before, and how to connect these things so that it's like a coherent story. But I don't script it out word for word. Which is more because I noticed that when I do that, like I sort of focus on it too much, and I become more like a robot on stage rather than being very free, which is not a good argument, because a friend of mine, Timon Krause, he says you should script and learn your script perfectly, because that allows you to go off script, right? Which is a really good example. He's like, well, if you can do it perfectly, then you can like find a way back to it, and it's probably expresses more what you want to say.
Yeah. I mean, I know I didn't always write out my scripts the way I do now, and I certainly wouldn't say that everyone has to always write out every single word of every trick they do. I think you have to have, obviously, like you said, a very good roadmap in your head of, this is what I'm going to say here, this is what I'm going to say there. I don't have it all written out, but I know this is what I do. I think people just totally wing it.
Oh yeah.
That's probably not a good situation, but I think for me, the reason I started writing out the scripts was because I realized that for me, and I'm not saying that everyone should do it the way that I'm doing it, but or the way it's taught in some of the other in the literature on the topic. But I found that for myself, I like, and this is maybe some of it's personality. I like writing it out because it makes me really think about it. And it's made me not only think about it more, but think about, if I'm going to be speaking anyway, is there a better way to say it? Right. Is there a way that's more concise, to the point, and more powerful? Yeah, that has helped me do that.
You want no fat on the script.
Yeah. And it's helped me because for me, I can get off on tangents. You may have noticed.
Oh, really?
And that's not good in a performance, right? And I've never done some 10-minute, let me get back to the trick. But I do know that I have a tendency to repeat myself. I have a tendency to repeat myself. I also have a tendency to repeat myself. But and I can go off on little tangents, and that's for me, I felt like I need something to focus me a little bit better. And writing out my script has helped tighten that up and make what I'm saying worth something more than if I was just shooting off the hip as much. So for me, that was a big deal. But the other thing I found is that when I sit down to write out the script, sometimes it's happened where I get a better idea because I'm forcing myself to sit there and think it through, and what am I going to say and how am I going to say it? And then I go, oh, but I could totally do. I've actually sat down to write scripts, and then next thing I know, I've kind of taken the whole trick in a little bit different direction script wise than what I had sat down to write. Because I realized, I like this better. I think this is a neater idea, not just a better way to say it, but a completely different idea on how to present it. And I don't think I would have come to that without sitting down and going, okay, it can be kind of hard work and not always fun to write out the scripts, but I found it to be a good creative exercise. It's kind of opened me up to new creative thoughts. So for me, those are probably like the two benefits. It's helped me keep on target in a performance. And then also it's opened up some creative avenues as well. So I think, that's been interesting. I wasn't expecting that second thing. It just sort of, I've seen over time that it's happened more than once. And I thought, oh, this is actually valuable.
So also.
Yeah.
Like when I'm writing for Invisible Practice or for a blog or for my book, like an essay, and I think like, what am I going to write about? And I get this little idea. I can maybe have like 200 words. And after 100, I just like get this new idea, just start going off on a tantrum, just like 600 words for it. I'm like, okay, so this is a different essay now, but this is pretty good.
Yeah. So I think creative writing is that way, and scripting is kind of a creative writing exercise in a way. And then after that, you put down everything you think you want to say, and then you figure out how to say it better, and how to say it more directly. And I think that, I think scripting the effects, even if you just have a firm mental script in your head that, not everyone's going to write down every script. I'm not saying that everyone even should, but if you have the more defined, the more definition you have on that script, the more accuracy you have with the more specific information you have for what you want to say, I think it does free you up in the moment to veer off and come back. But I also think it really helps you be in control of your audience and of the time you have with them and where you want to take it. And I've found that having my effects scripted has also helped with audience management, with not having people insert things in the middle of your performance that you don't really want there. And when I was doing restaurant magic, I did restaurant magic for 2 nights a week for several hours each night for 8 years before we moved to France. And then I had done it sporadically before that, ever since high school, or no, not high school, early college. And one of the things that I found was very helpful when I started really writing out my scripts, one of the things I noticed was I'm not getting interrupted the same way. I'm not, people are interacting with this a little bit differently. I feel more in control of how this performance is going in a situation that can, it's close up, it's at a restaurant, people are just goofing off.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's because I'm saying something interesting. I've given it enough thought that it's interesting and compelling, and it's theatrical, and people get a sense that they're watching something real and not just having someone come up and do something. They're watching a performance, and not that it's a cold distance between them, like they're watching a movie. I mean, I'm right there with them, so it's personable, but it's also, I have a very definite presentation. I have a very definite thing I'm doing, and I'm there being a part of it, and we're all doing this together. But there's no insecurity for them either. They're hopefully they feel like I'm in good hands. This person is competent. They know what they're doing. This is entertaining and it's interesting. And if you go in and you're just kind of like, hey, I want to show you a card trick, and you get into it and you're stammering and you don't, and it feels very much like, where is this going to land? That the audience is going to start taking control of that situation, because somebody needs to be in control of that situation, right? I mean, they don't necessarily want to be a part of something that's not going somewhere. So I think it's an insecure feeling. And I think audiences are vulnerable in a performance setting. They aren't the one who's in control. They don't necessarily want to be in control, but they do want there to be control. They want parameters on it, right? They want not for it not to be chaos. And I think if you go in and you present yourself confidently, and a script helps you present yourself confidently, or at least a plan, you're like, I know what I'm going to basically say, then that alleviates that kind of tension for an audience. And then you just don't really give them a lot of space to do it, because you know what you're saying, the actions, the timing of everything is happening in a way, and you're talking with them, and you know what you're going to say to them, and you know what you're going to just say, and you know when it's going to happen. That when that all comes together like that, they feel secure. They don't feel vulnerable. Like, I don't know what this crazy performer who I didn't even know existed until I sat down at my restaurant table is going to do. That's a kind of a, like, oh, you're here. Oh yeah, sure. You can do some magic. Oh my gosh. And then they start, if you don't show them, hey, this is going to be good, this is going to be okay, I'm going to take good care of you. If they feel like it's chaotic and they don't know, boy, they're in a vulnerable position, an awkward position. So I think that really communicates a lot to them, being able to be a confident, well-spoken performer, and then the script just doesn't give them a lot of space to inject a lot of extra stuff anyway. And then like I said, they're not motivated to, because they're having fun. They're watching it. It's controlled. It's secure. It's not, they don't feel vulnerable and, oh gosh. So for me, I found that has been a true thing. Now, having said that, I have zero experience performing for drunk people. I mean, the restaurants I worked in weren't ones where people have already had cocktails and they're having something with their meal, or it's it's a cocktail party or something like that. I had very few experiences working with with tipsy or,
Well, I thought you were performing at
full
college,
on
though.
drunk people. So I'm not speaking to that. Maybe in that kind of context, your script it doesn't matter if you're scripted or not, because if they're going to be nuts, they're going to be nuts, right? I don't know. Maybe it does help in those situations too. But for me, in the situations I've been in, the people were in their complete normal frame of mind, and the performances I did before I started really scripting things, and how it changed as I was scripting things more, and had a very much more of a sense of, what I wanted to say in a much more concrete way. It was just night and day. They weren't bad performances before. They weren't bad. It wasn't like I was getting into arguments with people or having people try to ruin my magic. But I did notice that there was a change. There was a difference. There was, there was a lot more. Well, I'll tell you when it really clicked for me. This was, before I moved to France, I was living in West Virginia, and I was performing at a restaurant. I performed at 2 restaurants there for like 8 years, like I said, at the same restaurants, and 2 nights a week. And, in that context, I was trying out a lot of new material, and I was creating a lot of new material. And I was using the restaurant as a place to try it out, and I was doing a lot of my normal stuff and mixing it in, so it wasn't just going in there. But some of those things I did not have it all worked out. I was feeling it out. I was trying it out. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't always polished the way it is, after 300 performances or whatever, and writing out a script. Some of these things weren't even completely scripted. I kind of had an idea, but I didn't know really what I wanted to say. And so that was fine and everything. And I did it with the moderation. I still had all my, my go-to stuff, but I would put these things in, and it was a great place to do it. But I did notice that as I got the script more, and refined the routine, and had a real good idea of where the script was going, and worked more on, no, this is exactly how I want to say it. The audience attention and the audience's reactions were getting stronger. As I refined that, the audience reactions got stronger. And there was one trick that was like that, where I had been performing it. And, at first I just had the barest idea of the scripting and the direction I wanted to take it, with the presentation. And it got good reactions and stuff. But then I started, I finally got to the point where I walked in one night and I had worked on the script. I had nailed it. I'd practiced it, rehearsed it, all the things. And I had it really the way I still perform it to this day. And I walked in and I did it at the first table I went to. And this guy, who wasn't a local guy, because they knew me, the local people, of course, would come in and see me all the time, but he didn't. He was just someone passing through. The restaurant was right on the interstate, so that was pretty normal. People would stop by, and then, who knows where they're from. But he came in, and I performed for him. And this is rural West Virginia. And I performed my script for him, and, the presentation, the whole trick. And the thing he said to me, he looked up, he looks around, and he's like, he knows he's in rural West Virginia, and just in the mountains. He's like, why are you here? And the point he was making was, and I don't agree with him, for all my friends in West Virginia, I don't agree with him. But his whole thing is, you're doing this here? Why are you here? You should be somewhere else where you can, get famous or something. And I'm not saying that my trick was worth that kind of adoration, but I presented it well, and it was a good trick, right? And it fooled him, it amazed him, it was scripted well, it was tight, it was strong. My words lent to it being a strong effect. And his response was, why are you here doing this? Because this is that was, and what he was saying was like, that was professional. What are you, why are you doing that here? You know? And once again, I don't agree with him. I was there because it's where I lived, and all my friends were there. You know, people I love dearly there, and I love the community, and I was very happy living in rural West Virginia. And who knows, maybe someday I'll live there again. It's great people, everything. And I was more than happy to work doing my magic at the most professional level I could in family restaurants in rural West Virginia. Why not? But for his reaction to it was an interesting one, and it's always stuck with me. Not because I think, oh, I was so great, and yes, you're right, I should be, you know, it's a famous magician. I'm not looking for that. I'm not trying to be that. But it did teach me something, and what it taught me was really working on these presentations and having it down, and trying to craft my words or whatever I'm doing to be the most powerful, not necessarily the most dramatic, like everything's heavy. It could be powerful and funny, you know, or powerful, and just that the words I'm saying go so well with what I'm doing that it doesn't detract from it. It only makes it better. And it only points out the things that are the most important for them to walk away with, or the most effective way for them to get the whole general vision for what I'm trying to do artistically or whatever. And so it really did, his reaction really taught me, that it kind of validated the work. I'm like, no, this work it really does matter to do this. It's paying off for me, at least, in that it made a big difference in it. And I thought that was just an interesting example of that. It's how it drove it home to me that this was a path to keep going down. And I mean, maybe he says that to everybody. I don't know.
Why are you here?
I certainly have had my share of people not saying that. So I stay in the real world here. But it was really a nice thing to say. But it was also like, yeah, okay, I'm going to keep doing this scripting thing. I think it's paying off, you know, to a higher level than I'd ever done before. Because like I said, I learned kind of from Tarbell, and not always, but after my first couple magic shows, you know, in the basement of a building, you know, when I was a teenager, I thought, man, I need to have something to say, and have a better idea of it. Because the first show was pretty rough. The first magic show I ever did was pretty rough. I mean, really? The tricks were okay, but the second magic show I ever did, I did as Ted from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. So I had a wig and a vest, and I was like, oh man, radical, you know, and I'm talking like, can't believe it. I can't believe I just admitted that. Thankfully, there's no video or pictures, but yes, I did a whole magic show as Ted from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, which at the time was a pretty, you know, a popular movie and everything. But wow, yeah, it was excellent. That's what it was. Excellent. But I did the card in orange for the first time in that show, and it's still in my repertoire to this day. I love that trick, and I learned it from Tarbell. I still use the method, one of the methods taught in Tarbell. Yeah.
Nice. Have you ever seen the Larry Jennings one?
I've never seen it. I read it in that little pamphlet he has. I forget what the name of that. Neoclassics, yeah. So I studied it in that book years and years ago, but I've never seen anyone perform it. But I've always wanted to, because I read it and I'm like, this is pretty cool. I like this. I've never tried to perform it that way. I've stuck with the version in Tarbell, but
it's one of the things you will see someone do soon.
Yeah. Oh, that would be cool. I'm sure. I was in my mind when I was reading it, I thought this would be so epic to see someone do this trick.
Throws the deck into the air, turns into an orange. Open and the card is inside. Like what?
Yeah. I was like, that's just so cool. That's just really cool. Yeah. What I like about a Tarbell, have you ever done the card in orange? You know, the Tarbell one that I'm talking about?
I haven't read it. Like I'm working on the one from Neoclassics because I want to put that.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's cool. Yeah. Well, then when you get it, video worthy, shoot me a video because I really want to see someone perform it. That would be so cool. But the Tarbell one I like because it's just a lot of stuff going on. You have a spectator holding the handkerchief with the piece in it. They can feel the piece, the pieces. Then you whisk it out of their hand and they've disappeared and they're in, it's in the orange and all put back together. And on stage, you can play that really big, and I've used it for kids. I've used it for adults. So it's one of those things you can use for just about any age audience or, family audience, anything. And you can get people up on stage to help you. One's holding a knife, one's holding the thing and all the stuff. And it's really cool. I totally, I got a reputation when I was in college. I got a reputation for doing that one. And so one day in the dorm, one of my friends was like, dude, people are coming over tonight. You gotta do the orange, do the orange, do the orange. And I'm like, I don't know, I don't know. And he's like, dude, it's okay. I already bought you an orange. And so we can use my orange. And I'm like, oh crap. I'm not really a magician. I'm not actually a wizard. But I didn't tell him that. I just, obviously he had no idea what the method is, but he's just like, everyone was like, the orange trick. You got to do the orange trick. We got people coming over tonight. We're going to do this orange trick. So I bought you one already. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is how in the world. So thankfully it was about 5 hours until the show. And I told him, I said, well, I need the orange to be, really fresh, because then, if it starts getting mushy or anything, I was like, could you just go drop it in the kitchen refrigerator and just, and then bring it out when it's time? And he's like, oh yeah, no problem. So he takes it and throws it into the kitchen refrigerator. And I just waited till everyone left. And then I grabbed it and did what I needed to do and put it back. And then at the time, when I finally performed it that night, he was like, I bought that myself. I bought it myself. It's never been out of my sight. I got it I bought it. And they're like, you really bought it? And he's like, yeah. So that was pretty good. At that point, I don't think I can ever perform this here again because it's now legendary status, and I kind of retired it. I just didn't even mention the orange trick for the rest of my college days because I was like, they're going to start buying oranges and having me do it like 3 minutes later. Like, oh, and here's the orange. Now do the trick. I'm like, so, and I didn't really want to walk around with prepared orange in my pocket all day long, every day, just in case somebody, threw an orange at me and said,
switch the orange completely brown. You go like, fuck.
Yeah. Oh no. That's a transforming, look, it's a perfect orange. Now it's all moldy. I transformed it. It's a transformation. So yeah, that was
orange
pretty
brown.
funny. But the Tarbell method in there is excellent. One time I was on a trip. We were on a trip. We were driving cross country across the United States, me and my wife, and we had a couple of our kids. We didn't have all of our kids at that point. We have 4 kids, but at that point we had like 2. And so anyway, we were visiting friends and doing different things, and I didn't have the handkerchief with me. I lost it somewhere on the road trip, and it's kind of like one of those things where like all my friends know I do the orange trick, and then I would go over to their house and because they're like, oh, we're in town, and we've been out of the country for a while, and now we're in town, and yeah, come on over, and I got people coming over, and you can show us some magic. I'm like, oh, sure, right. And they're like, do the orange trick. I'm like, oh, okay. And so there was that evening, and I'm like, what am I going to do? Because I don't even have my handkerchief. And of course, the handkerchief is specially prepared so you can do the vanish of the pieces, right? And so I thought, oh no. So I did have a handkerchief with me, and what it had was a tag on one of the sides, just like a tag that was like a just from the store. It just had, like the washing instructions on it, but it was the loop of material that was sewn into the hem of the handkerchief. And I thought, oh, maybe I can do this. So I cut up some card, and I got some double stick tape, and I just stuck that inside the loop of the washing instructions, and it made it work. And then I just folded that up into the thing, so they thought they were holding the the pieces of the card, and it totally worked. So just if anyone does the orange trick out there listening to this, the tarbell version of that, and you ever find yourself without a handkerchief, like your special handkerchief, that is a method, and it did work. It went over just fine. No one thought anything about it, and I was able to pull it off at the time. And they let me, I'm like, oh, I'll pick up an orange on the way. Oh, great. So that was a little bit easier on the orange, but I had the handkerchief problem. So anyway, so those are my card and orange stories of various times where things didn't quite look like it wasn't going to work out very well for me, but I was able to pull it out anyway. But this is a great trick.
Oh, it's such a good trick.
Yeah.
It would be great to see the Larry Jennings thing with a pineapple.
With a pineapple?
Oh, yeah.
Card and pineapple. Wow. That would be cool. Have you seen anyone ever do card and pineapple?
I haven't.
Is that a thing?
No, I don't think it is.
Because, man, it should be a thing. That would be cool. Yeah. So we got money and kiwis.
Really large knife on stage. So.
Yeah. We have money and kiwis and cards and oranges and cards and lemons and money and lemons. But yeah, haven't seen any much. I don't know. I'm not aware of much magic with a. Although I think John Carney has a trick in one of his books, not his newest book,
but
Secrets.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Book of Secrets. He's got a trick in there where he takes a trip to Hawaii and he produces a pineapple, a real pineapple as part of that. Which I've always wanted to do that routine. I've read it several times. I'm like, oh man, that's so cool. And the next thing you know, he's got sunglasses and stuff on his nose and a lei around his neck, and he produces a pineapple. I'm like, that just sounds like fun. So.
You know which trick I always wanted to do from that book? The egg, the magazine to egg.
Oh yeah. I tried that from that book, actually. Really? I did all the stuff and followed his instructions and created the egg, and everything. And it just didn't look quite right. And I didn't take enough time to really master making that egg. And I think I probably could have gotten better at it if I kept doing it. But I did play around with it and I liked it. But then I don't know why, but I just never, really pursued it to a place where I would ever be able to perform it. But it was fun to mess with, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
And I had a good time doing that. Have you tried to make the egg and do all the...
No, I still have to find a duck egg, but it's a bit more difficult where I live.
Yeah, I don't think I used a duck egg, which was probably part of my problem. I used just an egg from the grocery store.
Yeah, because
chicken egg.
Like a duck egg is supposed to be like more firm with the membrane.
Yeah, the membrane is probably thicker or something, maybe. Yeah, I know I didn't use the right egg, but I'm like, I don't have a duck egg, but I got a chicken egg, so this is gonna work. And it did, but it didn't work as well. Yeah. So probably I need to go find a duck egg, try it again someday. But I don't know.
It's a beautiful effect, though.
It is. There's at the session a couple years ago, there was a performer who did a beautiful version of the egg on the fan, and he has some really good work on how to make the egg, and he's got a great routine. It's in, oh man, I forget his name, which Ben is
Ben Hart.
Yes, that's it. And his book is called something with dark
compulsions. No.
Something I don't know. I don't have to look it up. It's Vanishing Ink has it. They put it out, so they would have this book. But yeah, it was Ben Hart, and I don't really remember the name of the book, but he had a beautiful
watching,
routine.
You can also see him do it in his Britain Got Talent auditions.
Oh, okay. All right. So yeah, so I'm sure that all easy to find on the internet. The book, the source,
I think he has this thing where he has this multiple pieces of paper with a word written on it, and then someone picks the word egg, and he scrambles it up, and then on the front the paper turns into an egg.
Very clever routine, very fun, and he does it beautifully, of course. And That is a cool routine and a cool, just, I've always liked that idea. I
But it's
think I saw
so beautiful.
Jeff McBride do it one time, on a
Huh.
video or something, to do the egg on fan. Maybe I'm
Mm.
wrong. Maybe he's never done it and I'm mishmashing a bunch of people in my head, but um, that it is a really cool effect when you have a
Mm.
good, really realistic looking egg and everything.
But
It
I
just
think this
happens.
was
It's
like
like,
the only time I can remember recently, like within the past 5 years, when I was magic on video and I was in front of my computer, like,
yeah,
wow.
yeah. It's beautiful. It's a really magical transformation.
Mm.
And then of course it ends up in an egg, you know, which is cool. And then also it's really symbolic. So I think the
Mm.
audience, there's a symbolism going on there that's interesting to think about. There's kind of a creation, the implied creation of life
Mm.
from an inanimate object to something that contains life,
Exactly.
you
Yeah.
know, which is an interesting, that's a powerful image and
Mm.
kind of one of those archetypal sort of concepts,
Mm.
that everyone can grasp. I mean, you can do that to music and everyone can grasp that. Maybe not, maybe they don't think of it like, oh, look, it's an inanimate object becoming life, symbol of life. But somewhere in their bodies, I believe some of that resonates, maybe for some people more than
I
others,
think
but I
I
think
think
there's something
emotionally,
there.
yeah.
Yeah, emotionally, there's something there that is resonating with a bigger idea
Mm.
than just how did that paper turn into an egg. I think
Oh,
there's a
definitely.
bigger there's a meta story overlaying that, that's
But I can
kind of
remember the same,
universal.
like Tamaris in the Magic Rainbow, I think. Yeah, the Magic Rainbow.
Yeah,
He's
Magic
describing
Rainbow.
about the egg bag, and that he
Mm,
also tried to do it with ping pong balls and with tennis balls and other things, and that
mm.
people reacted best to the egg because, well, first
Yeah,
of all, they know it's like it can break, but also he thought it was probably the symbolic value.
yeah.
Just like
I
some
think,
coins across work better with different amounts of
yeah,
coins.
yeah, yeah. I think that he's right. I do. I didn't always think that. I have changed over the years. When I was a new in magic,
Mm.
what I would see, what I saw from time to time, not all the time. I didn't really see a lot of live magic when I was growing up, but I did see a couple times people doing gospel magic,
Mm.
and they try to, this represents this and this represents this and this, and things like that. And I honestly always absolutely detested it. I hated it. One, I don't think most of the time it was performed well. Like it wasn't
Mm.
even performed well. So, so there's
It's like
that, right?
trying to force meaning onto someone.
But I've been trying to force meaning onto it. I think is a very hard thing to do. I'm not saying that
Mm.
no one can put extra layers of meaning on something, but when you start getting into, and this represents this, and this represents that, and this, it's just starts getting, feels really convoluted. And I'm not sure I've ever seen anyone do that really well.
Mm.
I think that it is if it can be done well, I'm very sure I've never really seen it in that way. And then I think it's very, very, very hard to do. I imagine very few people could really do it. And it would have to be really scripted and so thought out. And I've never seen an example of that. I think it's much more powerful when it's implied.
Mm.
Like, like with Eugene Berger's the cosmic thread. He's had several presentations for it, but the cosmic thread idea,
Mm.
and it's all destroyed and it's all reborn. He doesn't have to say this string is like the cosmos, and then
No, but that's
it's
also wonderful about it because then your head doesn't go like, no, it's not. It's a fucking string, you idiot. But it,
right, and you don't have to do all that, and people get it. It's something that was
mm,
torn and that was restored, and he's telling his story, but he's showing something visually that goes along with the story, but he's not going that extra step to spell it out. This represents this and this represents that, and I think when you get into that kind of stuff, it can get really hard. And I'm not picking on gospel magicians, because I've seen other people try it with, I think sometimes people who do corporate magic, they're doing, the trade shows. I think they can have some of those same problems. So I'm not picking on any particular group at all. I'm just saying, in my experience, that was one way I saw that kind of thing happen, and I just have never thought it was done well. It's just, I think it's really hard. I think even if it's what's being said and put on it is consistent with kind of like the inner symbolic message of it, like if you tore something and restored it, I think humans are pattern making creatures, and we make metaphors all the time, and we see connections between symbolic things and our life and the lives of people around us, and we just do it. Our brains do it. So I don't think you have to force that on it. But then sometimes I thought it went further than that, where people weren't just spelling out what was obvious in front of them, as if the audience couldn't figure out that when you're talking about death and resurrection or something that's been torn is restored, that you've kind of seen that in a visual way, and they have to spell it out for you. It's kind of insulting, but I think people just can figure that out on their own just by seeing it and making their own metaphor, realizing that. But sometimes I thought it went even further down a bad trail, where it seemed like what they were trying to say and put on the trick kind of trampled on the inherent symbolism or the inherent metaphors that an audience would make in just watching it. And it made it all muddy, and it didn't actually do anything to accentuate what was already there. It's kind of like stepping on it or making it convoluted. And I think that's tragic, because I do think, I like I said, when I was younger, I didn't think this, and I was really put off by the idea of symbolism. Imagine there being like I didn't know the word at the time, archetype. I didn't know that kind of idea, but these kind of universally understood metaphors that, because of our life experiences, we can relate to the desire to see something that's been destroyed be restored, or the desire to see two things that are not linked to be linked to, or things that are separated to be put back together, or those kind of things. We can, as humans, we have desires for those types of things in our lives, so that it relates, and we create those metaphors naturally. I was put off by that idea from seeing these kind of things that were kind of forcing it and kooky and bad and not even good magic, and not, and so for a long while, I just kind of like, no, I'm just not even going there, just forget that. And I think that over time, it started to change. I think one of the things that probably helped me with that was seeing performers like Eugene Berger and things way back, when I first started in magic. And it kind of like, I got the Tarbell set, and then like the next thing I picked up, at least that I remember, this was, 30 something years ago. But, I remember being in the magic shop and seeing this. I didn't know what a Eugene Berger was, but this was one of his original booklets, right? And I'm like, dude, who's that? Who's the dude with the beard? Because that's like pretty dope, And so I was like, I'm going to pick this one up. And I picked it up and I started reading it, and like, it blew my mind. I'm like, this dude is like the deal. Like, he's taking magic seriously and its meaning seriously. And like, it started changing my thinking. And of course, then I picked up his other intimate power, and then all of his other things and stuff like that. And of course, I owe a lot of my thinking on magic. I recognize owe a lot of it to what he was written over time and stuff. But he started changing my thoughts on that. And then I went to the mystery school when it was back in I think it was 1994, 1995, I think. And so I went to one of those and met Eugene and Jeff McBride, and we did the mystery school thing, and I wasn't ready for it. I was like mind blown. I was just like this innocent little doe-eyed, you know, like I didn't know what was going on, man. So it was a great experience though. But I was, one of the things that I did take away from it was, I took a lot of good things away from it. But even though my mind was totally blown at the time, but one of the things I did take away from is like, maybe I need to rethink some of what these things that I've kind of closed off, like maybe I threw out the baby with the bathwater, as they say. I did see I saw some junky stuff. I saw some stuff that had definitely skewed my thinking away from it, but maybe that wasn't completely what I should have done. Maybe I shouldn't have thrown it all out. Maybe there is something there. So I started really thinking about symbolism and metaphor and archetypes and studying it and thinking about it. And I have come to the conclusion now that I think that at least a lot of magic, but really maybe all of it on some level has certain meta stories, certain symbolic meanings that most humans pick up, at least subconsciously, if not more overtly. And so now I really take that seriously when I'm looking at a magic trick. I look, what's the story? What's like the metaphor? What's really going on in this piece? Or what are the things that this could really say to somebody? Like a card stab. I wrote a book on the card stab. It's a really sharp book, but I didn't really talk about this in there. I probably, if I ever revise it, I need to put some thoughts, some comments down, or an essay or something about the symbolism in it more, because I really didn't talk about it in there. But I think there's some real deep symbolism and some stuff people get inside the card stab routine.
So what symbolism do you think there is in that routine? What kind of symbolism do you think there is in that routine?
Oh, well, I think that one of the powerful ones is that something lost being found, because that's a powerful a metaphor, and people understand the desire to find things that are lost, and maybe not just physical things, but people, relationships, or all kinds of things, and things that they didn't want to lose, but are lost, and then finding them, how special and important that is, and what joy comes from when you find something you've lost, and it can be a really profound thing. And you can do things to encourage people during a magic performance of a card stab, since we're using that example. But with the card stab, one of the things that I don't think is done a lot, which in the book I try to, one of the things that I really work hard on is making sure the person is utterly convinced that card is completely lost, because it's really an impossible location effect. Card stabs at its best is an impossible location effect. So in my version, they get to shuffle the cards as much as they want, and then they wrap it in a napkin themselves without me touching the deck, and then the card gets stabbed through the napkin. That's one of the versions. And you don't have to say, and the card that's lost is like something that you've lost. I mean, that would just be stupid, right? And insulting. But you can say things in a script that lead people to think more about it metaphorically than I think people do make those connections on their own, but you can kind of set the stage for them and invite them to do that, without it being some big, like, I'm going to tell you what to think, you can just kind of lay the groundwork and just kind of lay it out there and let them, encourage them to create the metaphor that's obviously there, and feel it on some personal level. Yeah. So I think that's one of the strong ones in the card stab for sure. And I think it's
in the end, like the most powerful story is the one they tell themselves.
Right. Yeah. And so I think that Tamariz and the other artists that have really that I know of that have really embraced that and stuff. I think I think they're right. I've come to the conclusion that I do believe very strongly in that. I know that other people don't see it that way, and that's fine. But for me, I have come to the conclusion that those things are worth thinking about when you're creating a presentation for an effect, and at least not ignore. At least you don't, it doesn't have to be you don't have to set a stage where you're trying to make them think of some metaphorical thing, but at least consider it as you're trying to understand, what is this effect I'm trying to present? What is this effect that I'm trying to perform? And, what do I expect the audience to take away from it? What do I want them to take away from it? One is it's going to be autobiographical. It's going to say something about me, but what else is there? What other possibilities are there? And I think that you can have laughter and comedy and all those things and still have an invitation for them to consider it metaphorically on some level, or there's different mechanisms for doing that in a presentation, I think. Ways to do it that are subtle, not like, okay, now think this. So, but I think one of the really good books for this, if someone just wants to really read about magic and meaning, is The Magic Rainbow, because that book has the most detailed discussion of symbolism and archetypes than of any of the magic books I know. That I think that book's got a very good systematic kind of listing of those kinds of things and stuff, and so that's really valuable. And then the other book I would say is Magic and Meaning by Eugene Berger and Bob Neal. I think it's a fascinating book.
Oh yeah.
It will make you think. Obviously you don't have to agree with everything, conclusions they come to. And like Bob Neal says, they don't even agree with each other all the time, but in the book, but it's a great book. It's hard to find in hardback now. It's not in print, but you can get an ebook version, the expanded version of it as an ebook. So you can do some research online. I think it's at Jeff McBride's website, Magical Wisdom, I think. I think that's where you can pick up a copy of it. It's either that or at Lawrence Haas's Theory and Art of Magic. One of those two, you can purchase a PDF of it, an ebook, and that's the expanded version. And so there's an extra chapter at the end where and interviews and stuff like that came out, years later. And that book is just, I've probably read that book like 5 times since it came out. I got it when it came out. Actually, that's how I know which mystery school I was at, because I bought it at the mystery school, and Eugene signed it. So yeah, he's 1995. So there's his signature on there. But that's when I got it. So it was 1995 when I was at the mystery school, and it was funny because Eugene goes, "Hey, you should go get Bob Neal to sign it too." And for some reason at the time, like I said, I was just was so like overwhelmed by the whole experience. I was like, I don't know, Eugene, maybe. And then in my head, I was like so intimidated by Bob Neal that I wouldn't go up and have him sign it. I could have had this book signed by Bob Neal and Eugene Berger, but I was a wimp. And I was like, I couldn't do it. So anyway, but I had been writing Eugene by that point for several years. For several years, we wrote back and forth, and sent him some tricks, and he sent me some stuff in the mail every now and then and things like that. And so we had a cool thing. And then I moved to Paraguay, and I stopped, we just stopped writing. I just kind of disappeared for a while there in Paraguay. But that's another story for another day, because I think I've been talking too long as it is. Huh?
What happens in Paraguay stays in Paraguay.
Yes, at the moment, yes.
Maybe if we get you some beers, then.
So, anyway, but yeah, Magic and Meaning. I'd highly recommend that book as well. That's one of my other 5 books. It's the Scripting Magic and Meaning by Robert Neal and Eugene Berger. Definitely worth it.
It's a great book.
Yeah.
Thank you
But
so much for being here.
yeah, thanks. And I really enjoyed it. And I hope I didn't over talk, but I have a
Dude,
tendency to do that.
I could listen to you talk for hours, so
Oh
really,
no,
really
oh
don't worry.
gosh. But no, it's totally enjoyable. Obviously, I love, you know it. I love hanging out with you, Rico, and I'm so glad we were able to do that today. And you know, hope to see you soon
Hope to see you soon,
in
man.
person again.
I hope so too. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks. See you later.